thanks for taking a break with me. I've got a piping hot cup of Holdfast Coffee Company's Ethiopia brew. It's really good stuff. But I need one more sip because I've got a lot to get through in just a little bit of time. All right, so in episode 4, I talked about project scopes, and I said I'd cover scope creep, so here we are, scope creep. No one likes scope creep. You know what it is, right? It's when a change is introduced to a project and it negatively impacts the project scope. It's one of those things that we all encounter in one way or another on projects, and honestly, I feel like I've seen the many faces of scope creep. They're not cute, trust me. In fact, they can cause stress and confusion. But I'm here to tell you that you can totally smack scope creep down. Metaphorically, of course. Just let me give you one example of how I've personally managed scope creep on a project of my own. All right, so I was working with this really big, iconic music-related company who shall remain nameless while I enjoy my coffee and you enjoy yours. So anyway, my team was contracted to build this super cool website to support a live event that they were producing. It was a really fun project and they loved what my team delivered, which was exciting. And it was actually 95% complete and totally on time and within the budget, which is just magical. If you're a PM, you get me. So it was magical until they told us that they needed the whole team on site at the event to support the new site during the event. On site with the site sounds a little confusing, but y'all don't know me. Like going on site to that event, wow, 16-year-old me was like doing backflips in my head when they asked for this. And then the reality settled in and I think that imaginary teenager in my head fell flat on his face. You know, we didn't have airfare, hotel, or expenses, let alone the time for 5 of us to travel across the country and be on site to support this event for a full day. None of that was included in our project budget. So at that moment, I started to calculate the potential costs in my head, thinking, calculating, just to see, could it be possible? Thinking, please let it be possible. No, it was absolutely not possible. It didn't fit in. The scope had creeped out and I, as the PM, had to push it back out, or I had to ask my stakeholders to fund the change. And then I would happily welcome that scope back into my project with open arms. And in the end, that is actually what happened. Honestly, I got lucky. Not only did I get to manage this super cool project, I got to go to the event too. And it was fun. I mean, of course it was work, but it was a lot of fun. There's so many more details in that project alone that I would love to tell you about, but I need to move on. So anyway, I hope that story of mine gives you a little bit of an idea of what scope creep is, or at least one manifestation of what scope creep could be. I've also experienced other things like additional unplanned rounds of design change, changes to requirements, stakeholder delays, budget reductions, deadline changes, misunderstandings of the scope, and a lot more too. Listen, there is a ton that can happen on projects. I'm trying to keep this video super short, so if you do want to dig deeper on the topic of scope creep, check out the Art and Science of Leading Projects. There's a full free class and even resources on managing scope creep. Yes, that was a little bit of plug, but you should check it out. All right, moving on. On screen are some things that could cause scope creep. It's no exhaustive list, but just know that you need to be deep into the details so that you can make your team and stakeholders aware of the limits of your scope before they try to test those limits. Because we all know that's going to happen, and you're going to know it pretty fast when it does. Still, you should try to avoid scope creep at all costs. I've got some ideas to help you. All right, let's do this. How to avoid scope creep in 5 simple points, and I'm going to try to be quick. First, gain alignment with your team and stakeholders. Be sure that you agree to your project scope and goals. Doing that will make it so much easier for you when you have to decline a new idea that isn't in scope. Or better yet, it'll help you to steer them in another direction that's more appropriate for the project's goals and scope. Yes, this could be your opportunity to show your strategic side. Next, always have a plan. Here I go again, but seriously, It's a whole lot easier to avoid scope creep when you have a clear plan from the get-go. So take time to outline every step you need to take to get from the beginning of the project to the end, to do it on time and on budget. Related to that, be sure to talk about how changes not only impact your scope, but also your deadline. A date's a date, right? Introducing a change will most often cause an impact on your schedule. That fact, combined with a budget increase related to a change, can sometimes end the scope conversation before it even starts. And that's pretty cool. If that doesn't happen, then just tell them no, or sorry, no. And of course, explain why. Always explain why you're saying no. That's the part that will give you the confidence to actually tell an important stakeholder no. And of course, you're going to do it in your own warm and fuzzy way. All right, the last thing here, folks, is really pretty important, I think. Be sure to have a process for managing change in your projects and in your organization. This is equal parts setting expectations and also creating a little bit of process. So if you're in a larger organization, you might already be required to complete a series of approvals or even documentation to lock in the fact that everyone on your project agrees to a change in a budget or timeline. That's a great practice to have. On smaller projects with smaller teams where things tend to be a little bit loose, maybe a little more informal, I've found PMs who take everyone's word for it and keep moving on with changes. And that's honestly not a great practice. Honestly, you're better off creating a paper trail and formalizing that agreement. Call me a skeptic, but I can't take your word for it, even on small projects. Sorry, it's not personal. It is what it is. I would even go as far to say that it's not a bad thing to write a change request. Always write a change request, actually, but write change requests even for non-scope related changes. It can be a really good way to cover your bases and to make sure that no one's going to go back on what had been verbally agreed to. But yeah, write change requests, just do it. Any good change request is going to require the things that are here on screen. A description of the change, an outlined approach to that change, the timeline impacts associated, as well as the risks and costs associated with the change, and then a signature field. Remember, get those signatures, especially if you're operating under a contract. It's really important. All right, friends, I have to admit, I've been going over scope on these episodes. I'm aiming for 5 minutes and they've gotten longer, so I am the scope creep now. I'm a weirdo. Anyway, I hope you're liking Coffee with Brett. My hope is that these quick hits are either helping you or getting you into project management, or maybe they're just relatable and silly. That's cool too. If you've made it this far, I'm thinking that you're liking it. So do me a favor, give us a like and a subscribe to our YouTube channel just to get updates on all of the project management content we're producing at Teamgantt. And if you want to share this video with your friends and colleagues, I wouldn't mind that at all. In fact, tell them I said hi. All right, see you next time. Cheers. Hey.